The sun hung low over the countryside estate, staining the marble pathways with a golden sheen. I arrived later than I meant to, clutching the small envelope that held my wedding gift, a gesture that felt more obligatory than heartfelt. The laughter of guests floated through the air like bubbles I couldn't quite reach. Ryan was getting married. After years of distance, silence, and half-written messages, I had finally come to see him again. The venue looked like something from a storybook, white drapes billowing across the courtyard, violin strings humming softly beneath the murmur of voices. Everywhere I turned, people were smiling, glowing with the uncomplicated happiness that weddings promise. And yet, beneath the surface of it all, I felt the tension of something unsaid, a familiar ghost pressing against my chest. Ryan spotted me near the entrance, his face breaking into the same boyish grin I remembered from college. "Ethan," he called, weaving through the crowd to pull me into a tight embrace. His cologne was different now, richer, heavier, but his warmth felt unchanged. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I lied with a smile. My voice sounded steadier than I felt that he laughed, eyes flicking toward the tent where his bride, Lily, was getting ready. "She'll be thrilled you came. You were always the one I talked about." The words pricked at me, not because they were unkind, but because of what they hid. There had been a time when Ryan and I had been closer than friends should be, nights of careless laughter that blurred into mornings of careful distance. Then came the silence. He drifted into a new life, and I pretended to move on. As I followed him deeper into the reception area, my gaze caught a figure standing across the courtyard, Mr. Carter, Ryan's father. He looked almost exactly as I remembered, sharp suit, calm composure, a presence that seemed to draw attention without effort. But when his eyes met mine, something flickered behind them, recognition, unease, perhaps guilt. It lasted only a second before he turned away to greet another guest. My stomach tightened that I hadn't expected to see him again, not after what had happened that night years ago, the night that carved an invisible scar across my memory. It wasn't something I allowed myself to replay often, but being here made it impossible to forget. "Ethan, come on." Ryan's voice snapped me back. "Let's get you a drink before the ceremony." I nodded and followed, though the sound of my pulse drowned out the music. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and the scent of champagne. Ryan introduced me to Lily, radiant in her gown, her kindness effortless. She spoke warmly, unaware that I was trying to ignore the weight of her future husband's father watching us from across the room. As the ceremony began, guests settled in rows of white chairs beneath a canopy of fairy lights. I sat toward the back, my seat slightly apart from the others. Ryan stood at the altar, nerves visible only in the twitch of his fingers. When the music swelled, and Lily walked down the aisle, I should have been happy for him. But all I could see was the years between us, our closeness, our silence, and the secret that still connected me to his family in ways no one else knew. Applause followed vows. Champagne flowed. People toasted to forever, to love, to faithfulness. Words that sounded beautiful until you remembered how fragile they really were. At some point during the reception, I slipped away from the crowd to catch my breath. The air outside was cool, the sky dimming to the color of ink. I thought I could leave quietly, say my congratulations, disappear again. But before I could, a familiar voice spoke behind me. "Ethan." I turned. Mr. Carter stood a few feet away, his posture composed but his eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. "It's been a long time," he said. "Years," I replied, my throat dried. He glanced toward the glowing windows of the ballroom, then back at me. "There's something we should talk about," he said quietly, as though he were afraid someone might hear. I didn't answer right away. The sounds of music and laughter spilled faintly from inside, too distant to touch us. My heart drummed in the silence. "Now?" I asked finally. His expression didn't waver. "Now." The word lingered between us like an unspoken confession. And just like that, the wedding, the joy, the music, the laughter, faded into something else entirely. I followed him toward the garden, unsure if I was walking into closure or another mistake. Either way, I knew this night wouldn't end the way it began. The garden stretched behind the ballroom, quiet and dim, lit only by the golden spill of lanterns swaying in the breeze. The laughter from inside felt distant now, another world entirely. I followed Mr. Carter down a narrow stone path until we stopped beneath an old oak, its branches heavy with the weight of memory. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He kept his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed somewhere past me, as if the act of looking at me might ignite something he'd long tried to extinguish. "You shouldn't have come," he said finally. His voice carried that same steady confidence I remembered, measured, deliberate, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "I was invited," I replied. "By your son." That word, your son, hung between us like a warning neither of us dared acknowledge. He exhaled slowly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Silence again. The kind that isn't empty but thick, alive, pulsing with everything unspoken. I could feel his gaze now, careful, assessing, regretful. It was the same look he'd given me years ago on the night everything changed. I had been 20, vulnerable, and reeling from a breakup with someone I thought I loved. Ryan was out of town, and I had shown up at their house, drunk, lost, looking for comfort. Mr. Carter had found me on the porch, shivering and slurring apologies that didn't make sense. He'd guided me inside, offered me water, and told me to stay the night, but as hours passed, the quiet deepened. The conversation softened. One confession led to another. Grief turned into touch, and touch into something neither of us meant to happen. It was wrong, we both knew it, even then, but knowing didn't stop it. That night never had a name, only silence. And silence has a way of outlasting everything. Now, standing beneath the same kind of night sky, I felt it rising again, the guilt, the pull, the impossible tenderness that time hadn't erased. I never meant for that night to define us, he said, breaking the stillness. Then why are we here? I asked that he stepped closer, his face half shadowed by the lantern light. Because seeing you again reminded me that I've been lying to myself. About that night. About what it meant. I wanted to step back, but my feet stayed rooted. You were married, I said quietly. You still are. I know. His voice cracked for the first time. And I loved her. But that doesn't mean I didn't feel something for you, Ethan. The sound of my name in his mouth was too familiar, too dangerous. My chest tightened. You can't say that. I just did. He smiled faintly, not with arrogance but sorrow. Do you think I don't know the cost of this? The shame of it? You were Ryan's best friend. You were, the mistake you can't forget. I finished for him. He winced, eyes falling to the ground. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Because if you called me out here to feel better about what you did, I don't want to hear it. His head lifted, and for a moment, his expression softened, almost pleading. No. I called you out here because I needed to see if it was still there. That feeling. I stared at him, the words settling like smoke. The night air suddenly felt thinner. You shouldn't say that, I murmured. He took another step closer. Maybe not. But it's true. For a moment, the world narrowed, just him, me, and the faint rustle of the trees. The distance between us seemed to vanish. His hand brushed against mine, a barely there touch that sent every nerve in my body alight. Don't, I whispered. He froze, his breath unsteady. I'm sorry. We stood there, caught between guilt and memory, neither of us brave enough to move nor pure enough to walk away. Then, from the distance, Ryan's voice called out, cheerful, unsuspecting. Dad? Ethan? You two disappeared. The sound shattered the spell. Mr. Carter stepped back quickly, his composure returning like armor. You should go, he said quietly. I looked at him, at the man who had once been my mistake and my secret all at once. We can't keep pretending, I said. His eyes met mine, heavy with the weight of all we couldn't change. We've been pretending for years, he replied. One more night won't kill us. He turned and walked toward the lights of the ballroom, leaving me alone beneath the oak. The music swelled again, distant and bright, as if mocking the stillness inside me. For the first time that evening, I realized the wedding wasn't about love, it was about what we buried to make love look clean. I stayed there a while, watching his shadow disappear into the glow, knowing that something inside both of us had just been unearthed. When I finally returned to the reception, the music had grown louder, the night more alive. Guests were dancing beneath the lights, clinking glasses, spinning in the haze of celebration. From a distance, it looked like joy, simple, beautiful, unbroken. But after the conversation in the garden, it all felt like a lie too fragile to look at directly. Ryan spotted me near the bar and waved, his grin bright, unguarded. There you are. I thought Dad kidnapped you. He laughed and handed me a drink. His eyes were full of warmth, the kind of trust that makes you feel unworthy. Just catching up, I managed, forcing a smile. He clapped my shoulder. Good. He doesn't talk much about the past, but I know he always liked you. The irony nearly made me choke. I swallowed it down, nodding. Yeah. We go back. Ryan's attention was soon stolen by another guest, and I was left standing with a drink I couldn't bring myself to finish. I watched him, his easy laugh, the way Lily leaned against his arm, their future shimmering before them. It should have filled me with happiness. Instead, all I could feel was the faint sting of memory and the echo of a man's voice whispering my name in the dark. Across the room, Mr. Carter was speaking to a group of relatives, his posture calm, his charm intact. He looked composed, as though nothing had ever fractured him. But when our eyes met for the briefest moment, I saw it, the flicker of something raw, regret threaded through restraint. The night moved on. Speeches began. Ryan raised a toast to love, laughter, and loyalty. I almost laughed at that last word. Loyalty, such a delicate thing, easy to break, impossible to fix. When the crowd erupted in cheers, I slipped outside again, the noise too much to bear. The moon hung above the estate, soft and distant, while the music blurred into a distant hum. I leaned against a railing, trying to steady my thoughts. Ethan. I turned. Mr. Carter was there again, his tie loosened, his face drawn in the low light. You shouldn't keep finding me, I said quietly. I wasn't looking, he replied, though his voice betrayed him. You just, don't leave my mind easily. I shook my head. This isn't fair, to anyone. He took a careful step closer. I know. But I can't pretend anymore. You matter more than I want to admit. For a heartbeat, the world fell silent. No music, no laughter, just the truth hanging between us. Do you love her? I asked that he hesitated. I did. In the way a man loves what he's built, what's safe. But love isn't always safe, is it? His honesty cut deeper than any confession. You're breaking your own son's trust, I said, though the words trembled. And what about you? He asked softly. You broke mine when you disappeared. I looked away, feeling the sting of old guilt. I left because I thought it was the right thing to do. And did it make you happy? No, I whispered. Something in his expression changed then, sorrow, affection, and something too dangerous to name. He reached out as if to touch my arm, then stopped himself. Sometimes I think you were the only thing that ever felt real, he murmured. Then forget me, I said. That's the only kindness left. He didn't answer. For a long time, we just stood there, two silhouettes trapped in the wreckage of a secret. Eventually, he drew in a steady breath and straightened his shoulders, the man he was expected to be returning in full. I'll try, he said finally. But I doubt I'll succeed. He walked away without looking back. I watched until he vanished into the ballroom's light, swallowed by laughter and music that no longer reached me. When Ryan came out a few minutes later, searching for me, I forced a smile that felt heavy in my bones. Hey, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You all right? Yeah, I lied. Just needed air. He nodded, oblivious, then looked toward the stars. Crazy night, huh? I still can't believe I'm married. Yeah, I said softly. It's a big step. He grinned, eyes full of hope. You'll find your person soon, too. You always do. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that some people aren't meant to find the kind of love the world approves of. Instead, I just nodded and watched him go back inside, where everything looked bright and unbroken again. When I finally left, the lights of the estate faded in my rearview mirror. The road stretched out ahead, empty and silent. People say weddings are about love, but that's only half the truth. They're also about what we hide to keep love pure, about the parts of ourselves we lock away so no one else sees the cracks. That I went to my friend's wedding, and I left with nothing but silence. But in that silence, I carried the one thing that would never fade, the memory of a man I was never meant to love.